this particular analysis by no other than our own Sharad Awasthi from London.
They're good to be here again. The world's fastest growing big economy, that is India, is it losing steam? So between July and September of this year, India's economy slumped to a 7-quarter low of 5.4%, and that's below the Reserve Bank of India's forecast of 7%. 5.4% may not be considered bad if you compare with other developed nations which are reeling at 2% or around that number. But then India is a growing economy, and therefore it is a sign of concern. I'm trying to make the concepts of Indian economy as simple as possible. I have put together a few of the factors which are raising red flags, and what are the reasons to worry and what are the reasons not to worry.
Everything's fine on 93.9 Dublin South FM.
Generally, it is said that the consumer demand has weakened, which means that people are not buying. One of the indicators that I have looked into is that Amazon India, which is the market for the cheapest and the greatest goods as far as our geography is concerned, Amazon India is a loss-making company, which means that whatever it is selling, overall Amazon is making losses. Therefore, people have stopped buying, or they are buying very, very cheap products where it is not profitable for Amazon to sell through it. Uber India is a loss-making company. That means that whatsoever number of people were traveling in Uber continues to be stagnant. So people are not traveling within the city, neither are they buying enough. These are just two basic examples. The other contributing factor is India's goods exports have long struggled, and their share is only 2%. Fast moving goods, the goods that we use daily, that is also slowing down. People are consuming less goods, and that is attributed to the salary available for spending. Now, there are two parts to it. One is the urban salary and the other is the rural income. The urban salary is also not growing, and much of it is attributed to the rising cost of real estate in India. It's a boom. Builders have made lots of buildings. They are all expensive, and it is only catering to only a particular band of wages. Now, those band is already full. People already have houses in that price range. But those who do not have houses, they are of the low and a very low income group, and they are struggling due to high cost of rents or high cost of real estate. Therefore, the wages available to spend on consumer goods is under pressure, and that is where the consumption has come down. This is not a one-day process, but it is a fundamental that has taken its own time to decline over a period of time. So it consists of our habits in India, our consumption habits, our spending habits, and how the income distribution has happened to various expenses of rents or EMIs or buying luxury items. For many reasons, India's inflation is sitting around 6 and 6.2%, and this is mostly because of high cost of vegetables. It could be because of bad weather, or the cost of transportation due to high cost of fuel is a reason for high prices of vegetables and food items. So if you compare that inflation is 6.2% in October, or say roughly 6% through the year, and 7 quarters, so that means 2 years of low growth below 6%, in a way it is not a growth economy anymore, and that is why people have their worries. If you go to the bank, the interest rates for businesses are higher, and that is actually dampening the investments back into the business, which in turn is leading to unemployment. There is no growth in the business. Business continues to be where they are. So it's a flat line for them in order to survive. But because there is reduced investments, the growth in business is slow. Now, RBI was supposed to lower the interest rate, But then considering lowering the interest rate will only increase the inflation, which is already high, the RBI has kept the interest rate as low. That means the investments into the business will continue to be low, which is not going to help employment. Also, it is not going to help the rise in wages, and hence people will not be compelled to spend much desirable items. Ideally, the Reserve Bank of India wants to keep the inflation at 4%. So it is 2% at least higher than the target. So if you see, there is a toxic mix of inflation and therefore low growth in the country, which is hampering the Indian economy. Now there is a political element to it also. While the news and media shows a very shining India, where the global brands, the luxury brands of cars and clothes are filling the Indian market, but those are only pockets of it. So there is two Indias that we are talking about. One is where the foreign investment is directly hitting the Indian economy, and that is the creation of global capability centers by many companies in India, roughly 1600 companies in India, and they are paying salaries and wages equivalent to their counterparts in Europe and Americas. While the other India is largely the 90% of India, which is still struggling with the old age economy. Their incomes and their wages are stagnant, in fact getting hampered by the high inflation. So all that shines with the global brands is not true, or it is partially true, but certainly not when it comes to equality of economic growth of India. The political part, there are two political parts to it. One, that the dollar to rupee value has always been a matter of pride and status for Indians, and in order to stabilize that, India is selling lots of foreign exchange in the market. Now what that has done is, it has made Indian goods expensive in the global market, and therefore the Indian exports are suffering. Also, there is a pressure of Atmanirbhar Bharat, and because of that, India has taken policies to prevent dumping. That means cheaper goods from China and other countries should not come and flood Indian market. Therefore, Indian government has levied a high tariff of up to 17% on goods that are coming into India, but then they were being processed for exports. So what has happened in turn is that the higher cost of imports is hampering the exports of India, and which in turn is leading to lower wages and higher unemployment. So the politics is also not helping. But then the finance ministry suggests that this slowdown is only temporary because of the model code of conduct prior to the general election. Not much spending was done by the government, and therefore that has an effect in the previous quarter. So according to the ministry, India will recover its growth in the quarter of October-December 2024 and subsequently in 2025. As we all know, economics is an art and it can be interpreted in either way. So while people are talking about the slowdown as temporary, the others are calling India's economy fundamentally flawed, and they are not seeing any signs of recovery when it comes to economies like Vietnam and China. Hence, there is skepticism on either side of the country. While many are enjoying the luxury items because they are directly affected by the investments, foreign direct investments, and the others are struggling because of floods or failed crops or climate change or high price of fuel for transportation. Overall, it's a mixed signal. We should not be reacting to the lower growth rate, but then also there are serious concerns about the high inflation that still persists, including the strength of Indian rupee in the international market. Usually economics is not high on the agenda as far as the Indian news is concerned, except for when there is high inflation. Therefore, this headline too will subside over a period of time, but then we will keep a tab on it and get back to you whenever there are consequential changes that we observe. Thank you for your patient listening.
You are listening to 93.9 Dublin South FM.
Broadcasting from the Dundrum Town Centre, this is Dublin South FM.